Michael Bloomberg is running for president. But is America's 8th richest man China's favorite candidate? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. It's the Christmas season, and I know just what you've been wishing for all year. More Democratic presidential candidates. Thanks, Santa. Michael Bloomberg has officially become the 16th Democrat currently running for president. And that's after 12 Democrats already dropped out, making the 2020 election feel approximately 1,200 years long. Can't we all go back to just getting coal in our stockings, Santa? Michael Bloomberg is the former billionaire mayor of New York City. His main platform as a presidential candidate seems to be, hey, I'm here for when Joe Biden crashes and burns. But Bloomberg might crash and burn first, if China becomes a major part of the conversation. Because Bloomberg's view of how communist China really operates may be even more naive than Joe Biden's. For years, U.S. intelligence agencies have been saying China is America's biggest external threat. But what do intelligence agencies know? Here's Joe Biden talking about China in May 2019.
They're not bad folks, but guess what? They're not competition for us.
But Bloomberg blows Joe Biden out of the water. Here's an interview he gave with PBS in September.
The Communist Party wants to stay in power in China, and they listen to the public. When the public says, I can't breathe the air, Xi Jinping is not a dictator. He has to satisfy his constituents, or he's not going to survive.
He's not a dictator?
No, he has a constituency to answer to.
Is the check on him just a revolution?
You're not going to have a revolution. No government survives without the will of the majority of its people. Okay?
Okay, Chinese Communist Party chief Xi Jinping does kind of have to satisfy his constituents. But I think Bloomberg is a little confused about who those constituents are. They're definitely not the majority of the people. They're the leaders of the Chinese Communist Party. That's who Xi Jinping has to satisfy. Now keep in mind that Bloomberg is saying all this as the Chinese Communist Party is trying to crush protests in Hong Kong and is literally harvesting organs from political prisoners and holding 1 million ethnic minorities in secret internment camps. And when Chinese leader Xi Jinping called for officials to set up those internment camps and struggle against the people using the, quote, organs of dictatorship, is that not a dictatorship? I mean, honestly. Wait a minute. Bloomberg thinks that China, an authoritarian regime that censors speech and crushes dissent, is governed by the will of the majority of the Chinese people. Either Bloomberg has a very low opinion of Chinese people or a very high opinion of authoritarian governments. This is the man who tried to ban large sodas, so I think we all know which one it is. But that PBS interview is hardly the first time Michael Bloomberg has demonstrated his understanding of China. Let's talk about the U.S.-China trade war. There's been widespread bipartisan support for the tariffs aimed at rebalancing the U.S.'s trade relationship with China. But Michael Bloomberg has actively campaigned against it. Why? Is he seeing something the rest of us aren't? As a matter of fact, yes. And that thing is profit. Bloomberg, both the man and the company, are heavily invested in China. That's a big reason why Michael Bloomberg, with a net worth of $53 billion, is the 8th richest person in America. Michael Bloomberg's main company is Bloomberg LP. It had revenue of more than $10 billion last year. One part of Bloomberg LP's business is connecting investors around the world. Through the Bloomberg Barclays Global Aggregate Index, Bloomberg LP is helping finance Chinese companies by sending billions of U.S. investor dollars into the Chinese bond market. In the spring of 2019, the index began a plan to direct an estimated $150 billion into China corporate bond offerings, including 159 firms controlled directly by the Chinese government. That means Bloomberg LP is sending US investor money to China and making a profit from it. It's win-win for both Bloomberg LP and the Chinese government. But that's not all Bloomberg LP does. The biggest part of Bloomberg LP's business is the Bloomberg terminals. They provide financial data to professional investors. Terminals make up around 85% of Bloomberg LP's profits. There are thousands of Bloomberg terminals in China. Their expensive monthly subscriptions in China generate profit, but even more important is Bloomberg's access to Chinese data. Yes, Bloomberg's terminals around the world get real-time data from inside China's financial markets. And guess who controls access to China's financial markets? At any time, the Chinese government can shut down Bloomberg's data access. And that would affect Bloomberg LP's entire business, not just in China, but in every city, in every country where it sells terminals. So a lot of Michael Bloomberg's personal fortune relies on being in the good graces of the Chinese government. That might explain why Michael Bloomberg is helping the Chinese government resist economic pressure from the US, while at the same time exposing American investors to the risks of the China market. Oh, and there's also Bloomberg LP's news division, Bloomberg Media. It runs a bunch of media platforms including Bloomberg Television, Bloomberg Businessweek, Bloomberg Radio, and of course, the Bloomberg News website. It posts articles that support the Chinese government's perspective on the trade war, like Trump's trade war with China doesn't look like a win, and trade war madness puts world on thin ice. But it's not just about how Bloomberg News covers China. It's also about how they don't cover China. In 2013, Bloomberg News was accused of curbing articles that might anger China. They also had a special code they put on sensitive articles they didn't want published on Bloomberg terminals inside China. Because again, Bloomberg Media is a part of Bloomberg LP, which gets 85% of its profits from those terminals, which require access to the China market. The former Bloomberg CEO said, if you have a $9 billion company that is about to be crippled by a news division that loses $100 million a year, shouldn't you take a breath and think about the implications of what you are doing? Yes, let's all take a deep breath and think about profits. Inhale the profits, expel the truth. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's a little worrying that Bloomberg is so financially exposed to China. But Chris, aren't you being a little uncharitable? Would Michael Bloomberg really kiss the Chinese Communist Party's ring to do business there? Well, the answer is he already has. Back in 2012, Bloomberg News published an article about the wealth of Xi Jinping's relatives. This was when Xi Jinping was about to become China's leader. And let's just say the Chinese authorities weren't big fans of the article. They blocked Bloomberg News inside China, and they banned state-owned enterprises from buying Bloomberg terminals. It took a lot of ring-kissing to get that ban lifted 4 years later, including some personal ring-kissing by Michael Bloomberg, who visited China in 2015. He met with one of China's vice premiers, and he even wrote an op-ed in the state-run People's Daily praising China's climate change leadership, which is the same thing Bloomberg was doing in that PBS interview when he said that Xi Jinping wasn't a dictator. Bloomberg is also working with a think tank closely linked to the Chinese Communist Party on an event called the New Economy Forum. That's a global meeting held in Beijing that Bloomberg hopes will rival the Davos World Economic Forum. Because what we need is another event where rich people get together and talk about how they're making the world a better place. So all this raises an important question. How would Michael Bloomberg treat China if he became president of the United States? And that question might be exactly what keeps Bloomberg from winning the Democratic Party nomination. Overall, Americans don't share Bloomberg's rosy view of China. And you know what topic Trump likes to bring up during debates?
China is China, especially China. China, pouring in from China. China could also be China. China.
So if Bloomberg had to debate Trump on China, the Chinese Communist Party would hate that, since they don't want their abuses to be in the limelight. And the Democratic Party would hate that as well, since Michael Bloomberg's pro-Beijing stance would be embarrassing. As the Washington Post puts it, it represents a vulnerability in a democratic race that has embraced a more confrontational posture towards the Chinese government. On the plus side, it would certainly make the debates more interesting. So what do you think about Michael Bloomberg and his views on China? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, YouTube is demonetizing America Uncovered. So to keep making the show, we rely on your support. Visit patreon.com/America Uncovered to find out how you can help support the show. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.